Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, the 23rd of April. I hope you're having a great week, enjoying the lovely sunshine that we've been having so far. I wanted to update you today on the phone call I was lucky enough to be on yesterday with the Small Business Minister. I was invited onto the call by Emma Jones from Enterprise Nation, who represents over 1 million small businesses in the UK. And it's a call she has apparently weekly with the Minister, and a call apparently he really values because it connects him directly with small companies, allows him to find out exactly what's going on day to day on the ground, because he really wants to be as responsive and helpful as he possibly can be. What I've really found interesting about Paul Scully, who's the Small Business Minister, is he used to run small companies himself, and in fact he did so from leaving university through to joining Parliament in '97. So he actually really understands, unlike a lot of politicians, I'm sure we feel, that he understands small business, what we're going through, and he used to pay himself via dividends, so he kind of really gets that, which I'll talk about a bit in a second. Other people on the call included the CBI, FSB and UK Finance, are covering things from a broad range of issues. The theme was very much about restarting and rebuilding the economy. So thinking ahead, we're getting out of the crisis thinking, although we discussed the practicalities of the support right now, is very much about future thinking. How do we restart? How do we rebuild? What's going to be needed? And that acknowledgement of the things I was talking about earlier in the week in my video of the financial cliff edge we're facing. How do we overcome this sudden return of our full cost base, and the difficulties that are going to be needed to actually get us over that initial hump, and then rebuilding and the challenges. So they are being discussed right now in government, and plans are being worked on, and really think about that restart phase of the economy. One of the first things on the agenda was shared business accommodation, where businesses are either in sort of the shared offices, or they're in startup hubs, or just in office buildings where the landlords pay the rates and you have an inclusive rent, and the grants haven't been passed on. The Minister was very clear about this, that landlords have got to play their part, and they have got to get into the spirit of the way things are meant to be. They need to be passing on the grants. And also, if you're in a shared office accommodation, that you should be getting support too. So again, nothing concrete on that, but it's very much being talked about. It's very much on the agenda. And he was quite clear, if landlords don't pay their part, and if they're being greedy and unhelpful, they won't have businesses to come back to because they won't have tenants. So very clear message here that they've really got to play their part in this. Limited company director dividends, of course, that was on the agenda. And as I said earlier, he actually really gets it, because he used to do the same, and he knows it's not a tax dodge, it's the legitimate way we pay ourselves, and we're pretty much fully taxed on how we pay ourselves through dividends. The issue does seem to be, and keeps coming up, the practicality of how they actually identify our dividends, because we're not on the same payroll system as everybody else in the way we pay our dividends, and there are lots of proposals floating around of how they might identify that dividend element. It's in the FT at the weekend that the chair of the Treasury Select Committee is currently campaigning for it. The FSB, the CBI, everyone we know of, the IOD, it has not gone away as an issue. It is being campaigned for, and the Minister really gets it, and his words were, he is battling for us on this one, because he understands that thousands, if not millions, of directors have been left without an income, or at best the 80% of the bit of salary that goes on to salary, which, as we all know, we can't live on, and everyone else is getting paid out. Excuse me, I've got a lot of notes to go through today, and I haven't learned auto cue yet, but I will soon. There was a lot of talk about getting the local authority money flowing, and you may have seen a post I put up yesterday from Enterprise Nation that showed a table of which councils have and haven't paid the money out yet. Shamefully, Nottingham was pretty much at the bottom of the list. It only paid out a fraction of the funds they've had paid by government, and I see that hit the press this morning, so hopefully that's going to get things moving. He did say, however, that there are very real practicalities, that the systems just don't really exist to get the money out easily, and for a lot of authorities they just didn't have that process in place to pay the money out. So it is going to be coming. It may be a bit slower than it has been, but I think with the pressure that's mounting on them now, they're going to be acting as quickly as they can to get the money out to people. There are more banks coming on board for the CBILS loans, as I'm sure you've seen. Funding Circle signed up last Friday, and they're putting their processes in place this week, which I talked a lot about in my funding video yesterday. And a lot more companies are coming on board. They really acknowledge that the system is very clunky. It was designed back in the last recession for the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme. It wasn't designed to have this mass application of thousands of companies applying all at once, and it is clunky. because it's got a government guarantee attached to it, people have to go through a very robust process. But what they recognise is it's way too clunky for the very small companies who are trying to apply for the sub 25k loans. And there's still a lot of talk around this 100% guarantee potentially for those smaller loans. Although Rishi did come out at the start of the week and over the weekend saying he didn't like that idea. But, this money isn't flowing. And if you're a small company, you won't have a relationship manager. You've got to apply through the portals. The money isn't flowing. So there's so much pressure. I think the key here is there is a lot of pressure going on. These issues are very much still top of agenda within the government. And we can only hope that something is going to happen, because otherwise these small companies will fail. And they really do get that the small companies are going to be the driver to get out of the pickle we're in. So supporting them and keeping them alive is an absolute top priority. That came across loud and clear on the call. They talked about the importance of the growth hubs, the local growth hubs, in getting very real practical support out to companies as we go back into the restart phase. Obviously, these things take time to iron out, don't they? They're very bureaucratic. But I think, seeing how quickly other things have moved, we can be hopeful that maybe some very practical support will come out of those growth hubs. I know that D2Enter in particular have been very, very good with support they've provided in the past. So the FSB were talking a lot about these sub 25k loans. I think it's very reassuring to know that these big hitters who've got a voice, like the IOD, FSB, CBI, who have a seat at the table, are very much pushing these issues. They're not going away. And we can, I think, feel quite confident that our issues are really being represented. And there was a lot of talk about, we're going to need much more flexible solutions as the economy restarts, and small companies may need more help of, overdrafts that can be accessed more quickly and easily, and maybe even grant funding where we just need that money for survival. It came out that employers are looking for very, very specific health advice about getting back to work. They want to know specifically what is the advice around transport, or wearing masks, or around distancing in the workplace. It was felt that the current guidance is far too fuzzy, and it's going to stop people getting their guys back into the workplace as and when we're allowed to do that. And also the PPE availability without affecting the NHS. Again, really big issues that they really are working on, and they know that until we have that guidance, people aren't going to be getting back to work and the economy isn't going to be restarting. So that was quite a big topic of conversation. Excuse me, notes again. The need for trade finance. So thinking about practically going forward, working capital has been very severely eroded because people have burned up their cash reserves in surviving and paying payroll. And that working capital needed to rebuy stock, and for the trade finance, invoice financing, stock finance, asset financing, the usual rules of lending aren't going to apply, and they're going to have to think of some very specific and flexible solutions to get people access to the finance they're going to need to restart and rebuild the economy. Late payment was a big issue, and the minister is very, very keen on this. He's very cross about the fact that big companies are extending their terms without notice. I think I heard Asda last week were just unilaterally extending their terms, and the small business commissioner is working really hard on this, and they are quite happy to be naming and shaming. They say the funds have got to flow. Working capital has got to flow down the chain and keep small companies moving. So they're taking a very, very dim view of that happening indeed. Now, part-time furloughing was discussed a lot, actually. We don't currently have part-time furlough, but they recognise that flexibility is going to be so key to getting the economy moving again. So there are repeated claims from a lot of different directions right now. The need for part-time furloughing, because we can't go back to a full payroll on July the 1st, for example. It's just going to kill companies off, and there's going to be mass redundancy, which is crazy after all the money they've put into the furlough scheme. So again, these things are being talked about. There's proposals on the Chancellor's desk right now for part-time furlough. And I think that could be an incredibly helpful mechanism to get us back to work and bring teams back to work on a more gradual basis, perhaps. And the minister really emphasised the fact that digital and flexible working is going to be absolutely critical in the new economy, and how if you've got cracks in your current business model and weaknesses in them, they're only going to get exacerbated and exposed by the current crisis. Flexibility, working digitally, working online. We're not going to bounce back to work as normal. This is going to carry on for a long time. So really embrace flexibility and do all you can now to be rethinking your business model. And for people who are off on furlough right now, really encourage them to be training in whatever they can, because they can come back to you even more valuable to you when this all ends. So to kind of sum up the call, I personally found it incredibly helpful and encouraging and heartening to be on that call. Like, I stress I wasn't taking part, I was a listener, but I was very pleased to be there in that capacity. Just to know that these things are being talked about and are so, it felt very proactive, it felt urgent, it felt like he was really listening. It didn't feel political, it didn't feel like giving it lip service. And there are people up there battling from all angles on our behalf. So I think take that on board, take that as a positive, and to know that there are people really working hard to make things better when we return. Sorry that's been a longer video, guys, but I kind of felt you'd appreciate knowing what the call covered, and that's a 10-minute version of the hour call. Hope it was useful for you, and I'm going to try and get on more calls because I found it really cool. May be able to, I may not, but I will try. As always, I'll keep you posted with anything that comes up. Have a great day. Bye.